realistically, my goal was I wanted to see if I wanted to make it over the KOM with the group.
Yeah.
That was my goal. And because I knew Mitt would be there still.
Yeah.
So, and really my goal was to beat Mitt.
Okay, now it comes out. Welcome to Brainstoke. I'm Tom Telford here with Preston Niederhauser, Matthew Lefthand, and Preston's family tree.
Partially.
The best one isn't here, Emery, but we need to state the name. And we've got Mitt Niederhauser, the elder brother, Major Niederhauser, the younger, but possibly tougher. We'll get into that today.
We'll see.
To be determined. Today's a LOTOJA recap. We're excited to do this, and it's kind of fun to be in a setting to talk LOTOJA, talk Brainstoke, and get into some of the psychology, the family dynamics, all that went on that day. But this episode is brought to you by 3 organizations in particular. One, Carp's Cuffs.
Let's go, Carp. Yes, sir.
These bracelets that cannot be taken off without a blowtorch. Super cool. Thanks, Carp. Number 2, we are thanking Levo today. Levo is our corporate sponsor, a mind care company. And then Bolt. Who doesn't love a good men's shave?
Harry is scary.
Harry is scary. Thank you, Adam Barker, for what you're doing at Bolt. It's pretty cool to have a whole company devoted to men's leg shaving, which today, Matthew's going to talk about the importance of watts.
Absolutely.
You shave your legs, you're picking up 7 watts. That's way cheaper than carbon fiber. So anyway, just saying, thank you, Bolt. All right, dudes, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, LOTOJA recap. Here we go. Press, what do you got?
Major, first question. Truly, how close were you to actually pooping in your chamois during the LOTOJA?
When I got to the top of the KOM, I checked.
You thought you might have already. Those spring energy gels going right through you, huh?
Let's double click. Why did you check, bro?
I had to know because I saw a porta potty and that was the only one I'd seen in about 75 miles. So I was like, well, if I need to do it now, now's a good time. Had the time to spare.
I love this. So much to get into about this day. For those of you that are listening that don't know, LOTOJA, I actually explained this recently to a family, family member of mine who's like, "You're doing LOTOJA?" And I said, "Yeah, Logan to Jackson." And he was like, "What?" "Oh, it stands for Logan, Utah to Jackson, Hole, Wyoming." He did not know. So LOTOJA. You didn't know that either, Mage?
When did you figure that out, Mage?
Jack told me. I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Jack told you? How long ago?
Like a week ago.
After the race?
Oh my
gosh, really?
Maybe he is not one of my children.
Yeah. It's okay. He didn't know the name of the race he was in, and he's pooping his pants, potentially.
Still did it.
Yeah, still did it. So Logan to Jackson is a famous road bike race, 202 miles, roughly 7,000 feet of climbing. If you're Matthew or Mitt, you are expecting to do this day in 8.5 to 9 hours. If you're Preston and I, you're just trying to stay married by the end.
To each other?
If you're Major and you're in high school, you're truly special cyclists, to be frank. I mean, there are just very few kids who are lining it up to do 202 miles in one day on a bike. So pretty cool. There's a lot going on here. Matthew is literally racing at pro ranks in the cycling world. And the Niederhausers are a family, a father and 2 sons of, passionate cycling. And so it's cool to be in the setting today to kind of dive into so much of the dynamics. But let's start with this question of just, you know, possibly a chamois that is under stress and what was going on. So will you kick it off for us a little bit? Like what led you at 17 years old, right? To want to ride your bike 202 miles? What got you there?
Oh, I don't know. I think, well, because I've always seen my brother's success in biking, and it looks fun, because I used to play football, but then I started to ride bikes, and it's pretty fun. And then I found mountain biking was really fun, but then when I got a road bike, I started to ride to the road, and I loved meeting all the people. And then all these people would always talk about the race LOTOJA, and I don't know, kind of spiked my interest. And I mean, I knew what it was from his past races, and then I never thought I'd actually do it, but here we are.
Let's be real about it. I'm pretty sure you, Major, were convinced that you were going to show Mitt, your older brother, who's boss at LOTOJA.
I did think so.
So that's probably why we signed up originally. You were willing to sign up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's good.
Well, in my defense, I felt like, well, basically, I served an LDS mission in Puerto Rico, so I got home just about 6 weeks before the race, 2 years completely off the bike. And I remember in like April, I was talking to Major and my dad, and they're like, look, dude, like, we're signed up for LOTOJA. Like, are you in? And I, like, deep down, I wanted to say no. But deep down, I knew I was saying yes. Because, you know, Major, he's probably not going to be with us next year. And my dad's not getting any younger. So I was like, well, now is the year. Might not be with us either, he's saying.
No, seriously.
I knew that it had to be done this year, and I was really inspired by my dad and Major. They were putting in a lot of work, and I knew it was not going to be easy to be able to keep up with them. And that was kind of returning home, I was just trying everything to just keep up with them, to be able to hold their wheel. And yeah, we can get more into the race later, but yeah.
So just to recap what Mitt said, he was gone 2 years on a mission. So 0 to 202 miles in how many days? From the time you got off the plane until the race, what was it?
I was probably about 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So a little over 30 days.
So amazing. I mean, pretty remarkable. What were you doing anything in Puerto Rico, by the way, in particular?
I was. I was running as much as I possibly could with some core and as many leg squats, air squats that I could do at night after my day was done. So I'd run in the mornings, and if I had time, I would do some squats, and I'd work on my core at night.
Yeah. But still a missionary, still doing the work.
Yeah.
Still doing what was asked. Which I want to hear more about that, just the faith implications of this whole thing, because when I think about 0 to 202 miles in 30 something days, I to be honest with you, I didn't know that this day was going to go as smooth as it went.
Yeah.
Maybe the chamois implications, were a factor, but it was pretty cool to see, what was going on that day. Matthew, what was your lead up? Tell us about you a little bit to give some context for your year, because you had a LOTOJA last year. We recapped it. We had some fun conversation, but bring your story into this too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you guys are awesome and epic. I was thinking like how cool you guys are for doing all of this. And then I think what made it possible for you too is the base that you had. I don't know exactly how you rode Mitt beforehand, but I've seen you on Strava in a few places, and I'm like, that guy was killing it before he left. So I think there's a lot to be said of the base that you created as a cyclist, which we can get into about, my lead up to it and how that kind of went into. But also like being on a mountain bike is like the cool thing to do right now. So I'm super interested to hear more about like why you do road bike so much, because that's an interesting world. I feel like I didn't get the chance to mountain bike as a high schooler. That wasn't in high schools, and so I ran and swim and everything. Also interesting to say, like, you ran a ton to get ready, because like, I don't feel like running prepares a ton for cycling, but I guess the lungs for sure. But I don't know. Do you like running?
I don't. Well, it's okay. I will run if I don't have a bike.
Yeah.
I'll run if I don't have a bike.
Yeah. Interesting.
What seems like it was helpful is that you came home from a mission not with really large Christmas hams on your person.
Yeah, I think he was still in race weight, which I think was a big deal.
It's huge.
Yeah,
Right?
I think that was. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely had to watch what I was eating. The Puerto Ricans, a lot of rice, oil, and beans. So, I mean, I was up 15, 20 pounds from my high school race weight, and I ended up losing that towards the tail end of coming home because I knew I could lose it out there, and I knew preparing for LOTOJA was the real deal, and it was going to be the lighter I was or the closer I was to race weight, the easier it was going to be for me to actually finish the race.
It's probably, well, sorry.
I was just gonna say there's a big group factor with who you were riding with, and so getting over those climbs was the biggest portion of the day for you to make it happen. So
Yeah.
that's why weight mattered so much, right?
Yeah.
It's probably worth noting that 2 years ago, you did LOTOJA, right, Matt?
I attempted.
Yeah. How'd that go?
It was awful. it was not a good experience. I was super fit. I was right about to leave on my mission. It was my last race. And yeah, I just did not quite nail my nutrition. And it's pretty hard to do a 200-mile bike race with not good quality food. And I was pretty sick to begin with to start the day. And I probably shouldn't have just been in the race at all, just off of the way how I was feeling. But I gave it a go, and I made it to, I think it was the Star Valley Temple, and pulled out there.
So Afton. Yeah.
That's a pretty long ways to make it, and to like a lot, like just for people to wrap their head around that. What is that, 140 miles in or something like that?
Yeah, I was probably around 130.
Yeah, so like
So
to make it 130, 140 miles not feeling good, like that's like usual, like normal in our world, but like that's a pretty awesome achievement in and of itself.
Yeah.
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 I'm pretty sure he said to me, LOTOJA is an old man's race.
I did say that. Yeah.
There's something to that though, Preston, because Matthew, will you double click on that a little bit? Why is it an old man's race? Why isn't it just pedal your bike as long as you can? Because there is another discipline that's going on in the race. I think Major experienced this. I want you to cue in, but what is it about the other discipline, which is how do you eat and drink and fuel for 202 miles on a bicycle?
Yeah. So I think cycling in general has several things that like lend it to age and experience. And one of those is just your cardiovascular base over the years, but then learning over the years how your stomach responds to things, how much water you need in different conditions, and then just picking up on those little cues of like what you need to do and how to do it early on. I recently did Hoodoo 500, this 520 mile, 30,000 foot climbing crazy race day. And that was the biggest tip that I got, was like, you need to adjust early. And I've learned that in my training too, that like, if you're on and you're going and you don't feel good, you need to learn what to do in those moments. And training's the time to practice that and get used to it, which is why I think like just huge base training gets good. You ride when you're sick, you ride when you're not feeling good, you ride when you're not hydrated good, you try different kinds of foods and everything. And so I think some people, the old guys, they've just done it so many times that on the day of, you don't get to choose how you feel, you don't get to choose how other people feel, you don't get to choose what happens to the bike. And so the quickest person to respond is the one who's gonna keep the group, stay in, use the less energy, stress the less. Like a huge part of my hoodoo was I got started off on the wrong foot, and it got super stressful for me, and my stomach crashed. And if I had just like stayed calm and relaxed and ate right and everything, the next many hours would have been a lot more enjoyable. And I think that's kind of a similar story maybe for what happened to you. So I think that's why it's an like experience and knowing your body.
You just said something that I think is such a light bulb for most people. I don't think that they even equate stress as a key component in how you manage stress to cycling. By the way, Matthew, you are the U.S. national champion of?
That's right. The World Ultra Cycling Association, ultra distance. So
U.S. national champion sitting right here.
That's right.
And these are people who think that LOTOJA is an hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's a dinner roll
Yes.
for what he did, over 500 miles in how many hours?
29 hours.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Long,
stress,
long 29
learning
hours.
to manage stress. So
Yeah.
when I asked Matthew after, the race, hey, how did things go? It's interesting because he said, my stomach got sideways. And I said, well, for how long were you kind of in a gut ache, and he said, about 300 miles. and in my head, I'm thinking, wait, you managed a gut ache for 300 miles and you broke a course record and you're the U.S. champion. And so there's something there about the struggle to get to the Stoke, right? Which is the whole theme of Brain Stoke. Talk a little bit more about that and LOTOJA as well. Should you just plan and expect for struggle? Is that just part of the sport?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And learning to go through your pain caves is a huge part of the sport. I feel like learning to meet yourself there and how to respond to yourself, and then just doing it so many times. What was interesting about Hoodoo is that it was darker places than I've ever been. It was the hardest thing I've ever done by far, which is kind of crazy because I've gotten used to not being that challenged anymore. Like I feel like you do it enough times, you ride 100 miles enough times, you bonk on a ride enough times, your legs go out on a ride enough times that you learn to like push through those and suffer through them and everything. And I hadn't probably in a few months met something that had challenged me that much. And so it was kind of an interesting like, oh, this is what this feels like again. But what was interesting is that even though it was so painful, I had done that enough times to know I can make it through this one too. It'll be okay. I've been there before. I felt like I not wanted to. Yes, this is a lot more like when your stomach goes out 150 miles into a 520 mile race and you haven't done 2 of the major climbs, it's easy to be like, yeah, I'm done right now. Like no one would fault me for saying like, hey, I haven't ate anything in 5 hours. And like all I've been doing is drinking water. Like this isn't going well. But like, I couldn't even say that out loud because I knew that like, I will get through this. It will be okay. And if I really can't, I can't. Like I'll figure that out and I'll meet that when I get there, but I'm not going to worry about it unless it comes up.
I mean, there's so much wisdom, right? Everybody's shaking their head or shaking their head like, how do you freaking do this, you know? But so Mage, I have to ask you, right? So when did you hit the wall that you had? Because your day was probably one of the first experiences of this, right? Like I'm now in the pain cave and I have to respond one way or another. So when did you enter the pain cave and what did you do?
Well, I mean, I've done enough 100-mile rides where 100 miles doesn't hurt me too bad anymore. But right around when we hit 100, right after...
Which is right on the last climb.
Right, a little bit before that.
Okay.
Actually. So I got over the climb, Geneva, the second of the 3 major, probably the easiest of the 3. I made it over that, and I felt great. Well, great in my way.
It depends who you're with, too, by the way, whether Geneva's easy.
You were still with the leaders.
I'll jump in. Geneva was really hard. Mm-hmm. We ripped Geneva. And
it was hard.
From my prior experience, I knew that the next 25 miles after the Geneva summit were probably the worst 25 miles of the whole 202. And that was kind of where my lights went out 2 years prior. And I told Major, because we were riding together still, I was like, look, Mage, the next 25 miles are the worst miles of the whole race. Don't pull, eat as much as you can, and don't get dropped.
So that's exactly what I tried to do. I got 2 Uncrustables out of my bag, took down 400 calories, drank some mix. I even took another Spring Energy all in like 15 minutes. So I was like, I shouldn't mess up my nutrition. I feel good. I made it over Geneva. I didn't think I'd make it this far to begin with. And then something hit me right, not even on the climb. Like the flat lead out before the KOM. I couldn't pedal anymore. I couldn't do the power I used to. And it was something, I mean, I felt it before, but it was like, okay, just ride your own pace for 15 minutes and you should be okay. So then I get to the base of the KOM and I'm trying to pedal back to where I think I can. And I just could not do anything. And then this whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, I really need to go to the bathroom. The past 4 hours, 5 hours of this ride, I've been needing to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
My stomach's been killing me. And then I think I might have done the slowest time at the KOM, all of LOTOJA, but I made it. And just like him, the lights went out pretty bad there on that stretch. And when I saw the Star Valley Temple, I really thought I was pulling out of the race. I even told my mom, I said, she's like, I'll hurry in and try and give me my stuff for the next feed. And I looked at her, I said, I'm not moving for a minute. So I waited for you too. But that's
so it settled in really on that Geneva climb. And to give some more context to, the listener, that day we roughly had in our category, the Cat 4-5s, we had roughly 8 Brain Stoke riders, but we also had another friend, Ryan Welch, who was involved, in quote, our team. And so that day, Mitt and Major were riding with the front group that included Creighton Green, Max Wilkinson, and Ryan Welch. And on the day, and Matt Garner, that's right. So there was even more. So yeah, so in that lead group, those are some big guns, right? And they're pressing and the pace was high. So even though you're eating, do you think that you went out too hard? Like, was the pace too hard early in the race for how you were feeling at that point?
I think when it got super accelerated, punchy at the base of Strawberry. Yeah. I don't like that. I can do smooth power for a bit, but yeah, I can't go with the acceleration. So for me, I would love to ride every climb at 200 watts. But it's a race, so.
Sure.
I think, I was probably already out of my skin by the top of Strawberry. I think I was the last guy to make it over Strawberry in our group.
Yeah.
The lead group.
Which Preston and I and Mark Hancock were also in the same category, also riding with Brain Stoke. And I'm just going to be honest, like I knew when the move was made and it was legit. The guys who were off the front with you two and others who were not part of Brain Stoke, it was a pace, like it was a race. It was not riding to finish the day. It was a race to win the day from, this group of guys. And by the way, in that category, Max Wilkinson takes first place, Creighton Green second place, and Ryan Welch was where? Third. Mitt, you were where?
I was like 7th-ish.
And Matt Garner, I don't know where Matt ended up, but very fast guys, right? So, all that to say, Major, you killed it. I'd still, even though like we had a funny, conversations after, which you need to tell some of those stories too. But in high school, doing what you did is incredible. So you should be stoked about that. Talk a little bit more about, so you hit Star Valley, you go into an aid, your mom's there, where were you at mentally?
I was in a pretty, maybe my lowest of the race. I got off my bike because I knew you guys were close because I went pretty slow. So, I didn't get like that.
Shots fired.
I feel exactly how he's describing me.
I didn't mean it like that. I meant I was with the lead group. You guys were probably 7 minutes behind me at the base of the climb, and I went very slow up the climb. So I knew you had to at least be close at the aid station. So my mom's trying to give me all my stuff super fast, and I'm like, Mom, I'm getting off my bike and laying in the grass right there, and I'm gonna take some salt and some water, and I might be done. I was done. I took off my helmet. I loosened my shoes. I was ready to quit the day, and that was the darkest. I did not think I was getting on the bike at that point. But then you guys rolled through with Mark, and I don't know why I got back on my bike, but I did. And then something hit me. I don't know. Just maybe seeing the family or seeing you guys, it just gives you a little boost to see some friends that got me back on the bike and pedaling again.
Did you feel obligated? Did you want to? Like, what was that voice inside your head, or what was the action that got you back?
Do you remember
on the
our
bike?
conversation?
I don't remember our conversation.
Okay.
I do, but
Did you go talk to him on the grass?
Maybe you have a different perspective of it, but I know you came up to me you came up to the three of us. We were not expecting to see you, and you come up, and you were a bit emotional, a bit maybe even wound up. Just like, Dad, I can't push any power. I can't do anything. My day is done, something to that effect. And I remember saying, okay, I need you to take a deep breath. I need you to slow down, get some food in you. You're going to finish the race with us, jump in our group. I don't want you to take any pulls. I want you to sit on the back until you feel good. Something to that effect. I don't know what you remember, Tom, me saying, but
yeah. I saw the look. I'm going to call it the look
from Major
on Major's face of like, oh, this is how it really goes down. Yeah. Which I think, maybe Mitt experienced the 2 years prior. I've experienced for years. Matthew experienced it 300 miles into his, hoodoo. This is the point where, in my opinion, cycling is really cool. It's the worst part, but it's a cool part of really determining, like, what is my character in the moment? And how can I coach myself with the support of other people back onto doing the day, and getting back on the bike. And I don't know, Matthew, shed a little light from Matthew's a professional mental health counselor. So what do you think is going on in those moments, Matthew? I mean, on one hand, it's literally coping.
Yeah.
It's like survival. My mind tells me pain is bad. This hurts. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to stay in it.
Yeah.
That's against what my, I don't know, life tells me to do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I kind of have a foot in both of these worlds where I have this mental health aspect, which is helping people through dark places and anguishes of their life that are put upon them, that they're suffering through, whether it's chemical, family, whatever. And then I have this performance part of my life that's like, how do you push through the darkness of your body saying, I can't do anymore, and then doing more? And I think that they're like related and similar, and you can use similar methodologies, but I think they're also different in some extreme ways. And also, like, I use different sources for those things. So I think if you're in that moment of darkness and it's emotional and it's life-based and everything, yeah, it's coping. It's how do I realize I've been here before, it'll be okay, or I just do my best, or I have my support, my family around me. How cool that you had, people, even if they were slower than you and you had to wait for them and make up a story about crapping your pants to do it. Like, how cool that you have people with you and you have like a community. And like you said, this was about people. So that's probably a piece of it, was like, if they hadn't come by, who knows if you would have got back up and kept going. So that's a huge piece of it, which is a huge mental health, is like, use your people, be there in the family. It's interesting though, like, so that's one side of it. But then the performance side, I'm twisted. I'm like David Goggins in my head, like, you're not done. You're going to get through this type of stuff. And so it depends like what you want to pull from, because hoodoo and staying with the top guys like I did all day and just these crazy attacks and everything. And it's funny, when you guys first started talking about the crapping your pants, I thought you were saying because you wanted to be done with the race, because I hear some people when they're like, they want to be done, they want a good excuse. And I had never experienced that before until this LOTOJA. And I like attack after attack after attack, like I've never experienced before, chasing these guys. I've never had this thought, but I actually thought, I hope my chain breaks. If I could just get a flat tire, like I could have a valiant excuse to be like, oh, they're gone and I can't get them anymore because my bike broke down. And that was a new wall for me of like pushing through that. But that's totally the David Goggins, like, you know, they don't know who you are. You've got this. I don't know if you guys know David Goggins or listen to him very much, but it's just a very mentally tough, like, prove it to yourself. You're stronger than you think you are. When you're done, you're not even close to being done. And that's the performance wall that I've broken through enough times. So that's why I was asking in your head if there was something, and if you could maybe cue onto that in the future, but that could be future doors to open.
One of the cool things, on the day, if you were to ask, Major, what was your goal on the day? I mean, if it would have gone perfectly, how would you have finished the day? Other than one step higher on the podium than Mitt.
First across the line, right?
I think, well, realistically, my goal was I wanted to see if I wanted to make it over the KOM with the group.
Yeah.
That was my goal. And because I knew Mitt would be there still.
Yeah.
So, and really my goal was to beat Mitt.
Okay, now it comes out.
So I wanted to make it to the KOM to beat Mitt.
Yeah. And Mitt, what was your goal on the day?
If I'm being honest, I wanted to win. Like, yeah. I felt really good, and it was funny. I was talking to Blair Perks as the race was leading up, and I was telling him, I was like, Blair, I've never felt better before a race than I do mentally right now. Mm-hmm. And I think I just started thinking about it, and I kind of just prepared myself mentally before, like 3 days before the race, of how I'm going to feel going up the KOM, how I'm going to feel in all of these situations that could have happened in the race. And I started playing them through my mind. And I think that really helped me have I think that helped me access more power, like just being prepared for it in my head.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped. And along with that, the goal was definitely to win.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much good, right, of what you just described about the mental preparation, you know, which I wanted you to jump in on in a minute. But Preston, what was your goal?
Well, that's a good question. I think mine was a time-based, a time-based goal. Deep down, I thought 9:30 was really realistic. So I wondered, okay, maybe 9:20, but I would have been really happy at 9:30 in terms of a time. So I had written all the times down on my stem, just like I did the year prior of, you know, the splits I needed to hit at every key point of the race. And for the first half of the race, we were good. We were in good shape. Yeah. We even had a 5-minute buffer roughly. So I was on track. So I thought it was possible for a while.
Yeah. I mean, the dynamics were such that, you know, there was time goals involved. Everybody had their own kind of personal goals, whether they went public with them or not. But from a dad perspective, what was that like? Just, okay, I have a 9:30 goal, but now I have two dudes, you know, who are out on the road with me in the same category.
Yeah, what
was that like?
That was fun. It was, I know I was being a dad in the first, I was really only with them till mile 47. That's when the group split.
Yeah.
That's when there was the obvious split between.
So you guys split like right at the beginning of the climb.
Yeah, just beyond Mink Creek is where it really ramped up. And very similar to last year, that's where it ramped up. And I just knew I was not willing to go deeper, much deeper, because I knew it was a long day. And I knew I wasn't a podium contender. Anyway, so I wasn't a dad for very long in terms of like the road captain on the road.
Yeah.
But I was really, I was curious, you know, how are the boys? I know I asked you.
Yeah.
You were with the boys until Montpelier or close to Montpelier. I was really curious how they looked. Obviously, their mom was feeding us, and you know, I wanted to know. Yeah. And I was really hopeful. So a little heartbroken when I saw Major in Afton, just for a minute, because I knew how bad he wanted to be in the front group. But on the other hand, there was this part of me like, well, he's gonna ride with me now. We'll finish this together. And it was great to have Tom and Mark because they were great for Major. Tom was awesome for Major, I think, during that day, because we had gotten split up as some of us suffered worse than others, and Tom and Major seemed to stay together the whole time, which was a good thing for Mage. You know?
Yeah, what's interesting, it's funny you say that. I don't know that I was awesome for Major.
Well, I know he can.
Maybe Major's like, this guy's killing me.
No, Major's comfortable to tell you where he's at.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he told you he was in a dark place at one point.
Yeah.
And you probably coached him up a little bit. And so you guys were able to laugh and enjoy Snake River together, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing the goal for me on the day was, how can I help others get to the line? And somehow by helping others, I'm going to get to the line.
Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't necessarily know either, but so on one hand, it's like, was there a time goal? Possibly, you know, in the back of my head, I thought 9:30. I felt 9:30 fitness in the run up. You know, P2P the week before was an interesting, you know, race for me to try to double, but on the day, it was cool to see other people's stories play out.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the themes that I think, just for our listeners to hear, because I think a lot of people, how silly, a bunch of dudes in spandex who would even start training while they're still on a mission, who ride 500 miles at once. Like, what is this all about? You know, why do it? I would be lying if I wouldn't say there's some ego involved.
Yeah.
But there's something very deep about the camaraderie of the community that is hard to describe to people. But I think Major recognized very quickly about road biking. When you get into a group of really cool guys, no matter their age, who are out working together, there's something that binds people together when they suffer and hurt together. We've talked
100%.
about it repeatedly, right?
Yeah.
So even on the day, you know, in a way, when Major hit, you know, the pain cave, there was something about riding with him and helping coach him through my experiences that helped keep me going. I too was struggling on the day, but somehow with someone who was also in the suffer with me, I could keep going.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a theme, right? And I think all of us felt that way. Even those guys who Creighton, Max, Matt, Ryan, who were so fast and even, you know, were on the podiums there, they have their own stories that day of like, you know, even Creighton, who I remember, you know, Creighton has said at one point going up Geneva, like, Mitt, slow down. Like, you're killing me, Mitt. You know, and so these vulnerabilities of like hurt is so real on the day. It's like this microcosm of life, right? Of like, this really sucks. And yet I don't want to quit, but I'm going to need to lean on others to not quit, you know? So Mage, go back to that point. We roll out of that aid station. You've been sick. You're not feeling well. From there on out, what would you say, what were the key things that helped you keep rolling, keep digging mentally?
Well, I think a lot of it was Tom, like just following you, because you pulled me probably the rest of the way.
That's a stretch. That's a stretch.
But I told you not to pull, and you immediately started pulling. So something changed pretty quick.
Change after, because I really could not do anything before the after the feed station. And then as I took that 10-minute break, I ate a lot of food again. I don't know if it was my nutrition that I messed up on or some mental thing. But when I saw you guys again, I didn't think I'd get on my bike. I got on my bike. I started rolling, and the second we hit the corner out of the feed station back onto the highway, I don't know, something hit me. I could do power again. I could sit in the wheels. I could pull through and hold my own. So I was like, well, this maybe won't be the longest day of my life. I might make it.
What do you think happened, Matthew, performance-wise in what his change was?
Yeah, I was just picking up on little like mental cues or thinking through, you know, I was curious if like, do you get very anxious before races, or do you feel like a lot of lead up, like anxiety or stress or concern about it?
I wouldn't say like more concern. I get excited for races. I
Yeah.
think they're really fun.
Yeah. How are you on the morning of? Like, do you get that kind of like butterflies in the stomach or anything like that?
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, I'm curious how much of it was mental and how much of it was physical. It's so hard because they're so interrelated as well. Like I said, even at Hoodoo, like I train hours and hours and hours a week. Like I know how to eat on the bike backwards and forwards. Like I'm just good at that. But it was the stress of the day that shut down my stomach and caused a physical problem for me. And so I'm curious, what was the mental aspects that created that physical thing for you? You know, I heard you say you wanted to get over the KOM. So was there this doubt in your mind, or was there this like question of, can I do that? And did you like manifest that in the moment? And so it created this, you didn't have to really battle it type of thing, you know? That's how, like, if I was in your shoes, I'd be thinking through how much did that play with me, or did it play with me? And then thinking through, like, maybe the next time I'll try and tell myself, no, I can do this. I'll get over let me think about the finish line with them instead of worrying about that portion of it, and see how I feel when I lead up to that or something. Couple thoughts.
I love what Mitt said, and I want to go back to something he said, because a few weeks prior to the race, he started to envision the hard points and going through them mentally. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, and you can speak to this too, Matthew, but one of the things that I have found in my own experience and helping others through physical, races or whatever, is that mental stress creates a physical response. Mm-hmm. And so many people misunderestimate how to plan for that. And in racing, we call it race IQ, right? Which is, you only learn how to race and to deal with the stressors of racing by racing. Mm-hmm. And so you practice it. And I think that for me, I felt like I didn't know how the day was going to go, but I felt like someone was going to deal physically with a mental stressor, mm-hmm. meaning they were mentally stressed about the KOM or the climbs. And because of that mental stress, it does drain the battery. We talked about mm-hmm. this in a prior episode, that there's a physical drainage with a mental stressor. And so, I mean, now, Major, like, to a degree, what is LOTOJA like? And you probably would approach it entirely different, right? And so Preston and I purposefully, the last 2 years, which I feel like has been the secret to my sauce, I don't know about you, Preston, you can speak to this, is that when we go out to do our really long rides, we're not just saying we're going to go do 100 miles. We're going to purposefully put ourselves in mental stress, right? So when we finished together, Mitt, a couple weeks prior, and we are doing, arguably the toughest climb, which is the backside, of Deer Valley, climbing up to Empire Summit, Pine Canyon, it's called. This horrible. And after 100 days to finish on Pine Canyon, what I was doing, I know physically I could do it, but what I was trying to do was to put myself in a mental stressor response of knowing I'm going to ride 6 or 7 hours and then I have to finish on Pine Canyon because I want to know what my body is going to do physically when I've dealt with a mental stress of a massive climb at the end, right? And so I'm trying to mirror or put into my ability to cope and deal with mental stress on the physical response.
Yeah.
What is that called, Matthew? I mean, what would you even say that process is? We just do it because we thought it was a good strategy. Mitt was there that day. But what is that called, like in performance mental coaching?
No, maybe if I talk through it, the terms will come to me, but I was more thinking along the aspects of like how similarly I think about it and how you do that so that you can in the moment kind of like check out or accept the reality of what you're doing and not experience it. Because if you experience it, if you experience your heart rate through the roof and your legs not responding and feeling like you can't get any more oxygen in or whatever, like the only thing that's left to do is to go kaput, But if you know that like you've put in the work, you've done everything and it's time to go and you just check out and you say, I can do this, the thing that I tell myself when I'm climbing, like when we went over the summit there, I pushed our group and I went over first. And the thing that I always tell myself is I can suffer more than them. They're hurting more than I am. And I've done that enough times that I can believe it. I haven't done it enough times in like the sprinting world or those big burst worlds that I was not ready for. Like there was so many times where I was like, just go guys. Like I'm done and I can't do it and I don't have anything left. So like what you call that performance wise, I've heard different athletes refer to it differently. Michael Phelps had a really cool way of saying play the tape. I think I may have mentioned that on here before. I don't think you guys have heard that before either, but like when he would race, him and his coach would say, we've put in the work. He would envision it as well during his practices, especially during those hard sets. He would imagine himself in the pool with his competitors next to him, imagine all the people there cheering and stuff like that. And the idea was, okay, it's race day. We've done this. It's already done. There's nothing more you can do on a performance day to make it any better. You've already put in all the work. And so the idea was just play the tape, just go there and experience it and be there and do it and get it done.
In sport, they call it muscle memory, build the muscle memory, but it's oftentimes overlooked that you're also building mental memory, that your mind remembers and knows what it's like to suffer. And then you play the tape. When I say play the tape in my own mind, like I knew right then, Major, like the same place that you were suffering, I knew right then, to Mitt's point about preparation, there were 3 points I knew in the day that I was going to need to play my tape. And my playing my tape means, Tom, you got this. You can do this. I go into positive self-talk. I know, I had a smiley face from Preston's, Smiley Watts, that we talked about, a month prior. So on my top 2 was the smiley face, just to remember, okay, that's a reminder for me to play the tape, the positive self-talk.
See, here's the irony. The mental therapist maybe should be the one telling himself that, but instead the mental therapist is like, kill him, like leave him behind. No mercy taken. But yeah, performance and like, it depends what your goal is, right? Like you said, you had different goals going into it. So if you want to be on the podium, if you want to be all on the line first, then you have to pull it from different places.
For sure.
And also, like, depending what battles you're facing, we had a really good conversation with Blair about stress and life and everything. And so if you're battling those battles, you need to answer those things in the ways of, I've got this and everything's going to be okay and I'm doing my best or whatever. And then also be able to switch into the mode of like, let's go get them and type stuff. So
Totally. And goals are key, you know, for the day, which is why I wanted to just hear, like, what goals did you have, and what stressor, you know, happened because of maybe some of the goals that you had and the expectations of the day, you know? So Mitt, when you go back to starting to play, you know, 2 or 3 weeks prior of mentally preparing yourself, how did you do that? I mean, was it intentional? Was it just starting to, maybe there was some fear setting in, like, holy cow, you really do, if you're going to achieve this of being on the podium or winning, right? When you start to visualize winning, there is some fear along with that of like, well, now I got to go suffer to do the winning, you know? So were you doing it kind of like, okay, well, if I'm going to take on this goal, then I have to be ready to do it?
Yeah, I think obviously there was a lot of me thinking about it off the bike. I was envisioning, you know, certain parts of the race, how he's going to feel, like kind of trying to figure out nutrition and all the things, just thinking about that stuff consciously. But then it became where I started on my training rides, I was thinking about, okay, like this climb's kind of similar to the LOTOJA KOM, or this climb's kind of similar to Strawberry, and kind of picking parts of my training and stuff that was kind of like the race and being like, okay, well, this climb, you're going to be in a really hard, like dark place here. It's not going to be easy, you know? And I think a lot of it was just training with the guys. I remember there was a Tuesday night here up in Mountain Green is kind of a religious day for some of us, for us cyclists. There's a really big group ride, and it's really hard, it's really fast, and it's great training. And I remember one day I rode with Max and Creighton, and we just went a little bit earlier. We rode Old Snow Basin Loop. It's about 30 miles, and kind of the most coveted climb out of our neighborhood, Trappers, up towards Snow Basin. I remember we did it really, really hard, and it really hurt. And we got over it. We did it really fast. And then after, I come into the group ride, and I'm completely cooked. Like I had a headache. I was seeing stars. Like I felt horrible because I just put my body through the ringer over that ride. And I knew it wasn't going to get any easier. But I knew, I was like, well, it's kind of like LOTOJA in a way. You just had some good climbing and you went really hard. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to have to go hammer the flats for the next 30 miles for LOTOJA. And that's really where the racing begins. It's like you got to make it over the climbs to even play in the race almost, because you can't win the race on the climbs necessarily, but you can definitely lose it there. Mm-hmm. So those rides really helped in thinking about where I would be, and that sort of thing kind of helped me throughout LOTOJA, I think.
I love your comment of visualizing certain climbs as the particular one, so that later on you can bookmark that and go back on that climb and say, I've done this before, I've been there, I can do it again. I love doing that. I think like towards the end of a race, if it's a certain mileage or I know it's going to be a certain amount of time, I think of my training rides and how like, okay, I've done this a million times. Like I've plugged in and gotten it done. So that's invaluable. Super cool.
A question for Major, and then to Matthew to answer the same thing. Major, you've now done LOTOJA. You're a LOTOJA finisher at 17 years old. Mitt never did that.
I didn't.
I have to just throw it out there. A little bit of, just like, yeah, bro.
He did fail his first time.
Hey.
So you have one in one way.
So my question for you, and then to Matthew, now that you've done 202 miles LOTOJA, now that you've done 500 and something miles, what do you believe about what is possible as a human to train yourself to do and to finish?
I don't know. I think there's definitely limits, but I think 200 miles is nowhere near. I mean, Matthew did 500, but Matthew's. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think there are limits that we should set ourselves. I think you could pedal till you die, honestly, if you have the right nutrition. Is that the right question?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, the point being, what you thought was possible. I mean, over a year and a half ago, you were playing football, and I don't know. Maybe Dad can speak to this, but in relatively short amount of time, a year, your body composition has changed. Right. Your mindset is likely different. I mean, what is Dad? Then we can go to Matthew, but what have you seen in Major just in terms of what cycling is done and
You know, we're avid cycling fans in our home. Like we watch bike racing. That's what we do. We love that. And Major and Mitt have watched bike racing since they've been born. They've watched the Tour de France at least, you know, with Dad early in the morning. So Major always really understood the sport. He understood the strategy. He understood a lot of the dynamics or intricacies of bike racing that maybe a lot of, at least road racing, that a lot of people maybe didn't gather. So I think he had this knowledge base that was really helpful.
Yeah.
And then he was a lineman. He was the center on the football team. So he was this big kid. And he he was the smallest lineman on the team, let's say that, but he was also really strong. And as he started to ride a bike, yeah, obviously all that leg strength and power, you know, developed, and he discovered that he could ride really well on a road bike. So I think all of those things coming together, understanding the sport really well, discovering that, oh, I'm actually pretty strong. Wow. You know, and then he wins East Canyon Road Race, for example. He figures some things out. So I think all those things were really beneficial to Mage. And he loves it. I genuinely, I think he really loves riding his road bike way more than his mountain bike. And most people prefer mountain over road if they do both.
Yeah.
But I think it's because he understands the sport and the dynamics and the strategy, because that's what makes it really fun when you get all of those things.
How has the love of the sport for you, Matthew, impacted your ability to want to see how far you can go?
Yeah, totally. And I think I'll tie that into answering your other thing. How far is an interesting thing, because cycling is such an interesting activity that you could like completely waste yourself in 10 minutes, or you could ride thousands of miles for days and days, and like after days and days and days of riding and riding. I don't know if you guys know who Lael Wilcox is. If you followed her around the world, set the record just recently.
Yep.
What was it? April until now or something like that. I don't know, something. But just there's crazy things you can do. Like I don't think that there are as many limits as we think there are. Obviously, we're constrained by nutrition and body and sleep and all that kind of stuff. But even to some extent, like those barriers get broken. And so I think it's such a unique thing. It's what do you want to do and what do you want to accomplish? This year for me, racing has been so interesting because I've done hill climbs, I've done road racing, I've done ultra events, done a whole bunch of TT stuff on my own. And so it's kind of an interesting question to say, like, what do I want to do and what do I like? You know, do I like the team aspect of it and the family and the strategy of it and whatnot? Or do I like to just go out there and go all day and push myself as hard as I can? Personally, one of the things that clicked for me with cycling is I've always been the kind of person that's like, I want to go to the top of the mountain and I want to just like burn the whole way. Like for some reason, I've just always liked, which is weird to everyone else, but it's just fine to me. I like the burn. I like to just go and go and go and push myself as hard as I can for as long as I can. And so obviously that lends me to this TT world and to this endurance world. And then doing these road races has been interesting because it's a totally different kind of push and dynamic and strategy. And I've watched it on TV. I've watched the Tour several times now and gotten into cycling, but doing it's just so wildly different. And you learn a lot about yourself in those moments. So like to put it in a numbers perspective, if you want to, my average at LOTOJA watt wise was 4 less than over Hoodoo for the 29 hours. Average, normalized power, something different. But what happened at LOTOJA was that we did 800, 900 watts to like catch the wheel, and then like 400 watts on all the climbs, and we're just busting our butt. And then we're doing like 150 in the draft. Our pulls are like 200. I'm chatting for 30 minutes with the guy who won the race about like kids and family and life and whatnot. And then the next second we're like just bustling after each other and barely catching on and just like faces red and whatnot. So it's like, do you like that? Because some people, they live for that. I've learned that. And you can see it in the Tour and you can see it in the racers. That's just their game. Like Mark Cavendish, you know, seems like such a nice dude. But when that dude's on a bike, he like something else comes alive in him. I swear. And he lives for that. And he's done it for years and years and years. But I like the long stuff. I like the just burning. So I think it's not a question of like how far or what can Like, what can you accomplish in that way? It's what do you want to accomplish and what like calls to you and answering that. And I wish at your guys' age, I would have like plugged into that somehow. Like I thought I was a runner. I thought I was a swimmer. But I wish I would have found cycling or allowed myself to explore into other things even more. So you guys are a cycling family. So dad, close your ears, but like do other stuff as well. You know, like try whatever you want to, or try different kinds of cycling and really find the thing that calls to you. And then like go after that. Cause when you find it, this is to answer your second part of your question. Like it just lights you up. Like I never had anything in my life that I really wanted to go for before cycling, other than like, of course, I'm a huge family person, love my kids, love my wife. That's been my other thing until now. I've never had a hobby or an interest that I really wanted to go for. And it's unlike anything else to find that thing that you just want to do. And then you'll make your life work for it. So right now, my life is like eating, sleeping, family, bike riding. And I am like happy as can be, you know, like I don't need anything else. And I think that so many other people, you look for it everywhere. You try and find happiness in so many different places. And if you can just find the couple of things that make you happy, then I don't think the question even is about how far can you go. You just get there.
Yeah.
You just do the thing. You asked how I prepared for these things. I just love getting on the bike. And so I get on the bike and I ride and I push myself and I train. And then the events just come. Like I'm super surprised with like thinking that I would win a national championship this year was not in the plan even earlier this year. Certainly wasn't in the plan last year. It just came out of like passion and living a passion-driven life.
So the answer to the question really is you can go from not riding a bicycle to less than 3 years later becoming a national champion at endurance
The
cycling.
answer is yes.
Because Matthew did not ride a bicycle until 3 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
And so
2 years and 3 months.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing, you know, to get there. It's amazing to go from being a center on a football team to finishing LOTOJA. So how far can you go? The answer is really far.
Yeah.
When you love it and you're passionate about the sport, you know, and you have camaraderie and there's another component to this. Maybe we can go around and answer this as our last question, but how have each of you liked doing hard things? How important is that to this? You know, I mean, oftentimes people think, you know, sweat is like toxic rain. Like, I don't want to go sweat. Like, I don't want to do something hard. Like, it's against human nature maybe to do hard, but there's also something so deeply human about doing hard, right? To have the struggle, to feel the stoke in life, to have a passion that you find. So maybe, Mitt, do you want to start with that? How important is it just doing hard things, you know, to you and the fulfillment of it?
Yeah, I think doing hard things is kind of like you were saying. It's maybe a little out of the norm to go ride your bike 500 miles in 29 hours. Like, yeah, that's not normal. That's crazy hard, right? And I think hard is, for me, there's nothing, I feel so good when I get home from like a crazy hard bike ride where I just destroyed myself. Like I feel joy in that, and I enjoy it because I know it's working towards something, and I know I'm improving, I'm getting better. And I think probably almost for any aspect of life, like in order to improve, it's going to be hard. Like that constant improvement of being better in a career or racing a sport, I think to improve, to become better, it's going to get hard at some point in time. And to make the next step, it's going to get hard. So I think maybe just because I love like the improvement and becoming better and pushing myself, I think hard things is something that comes along with that. So I think, yeah, I guess that's how I'd answer that.
It's good. Press?
Yeah, I think Mitt said it. Like, I love the feeling I have when I cross the finish line or when I sit at the kitchen counter after a long, hard day on the bike and I'm drinking my protein drink and I'm just scrolling through my day and looking at it. That gives me a lot of pride in what I just did and accomplished. I love having something on the calendar to work for and to work towards. And I think these last couple of years, I've figured out how to really stick to a goal and stick to a plan, and that's to do something hard. And that's all been really rewarding because the results speak for themselves if you follow the plan or the strategy. So that's, I think it's, the reward, how good you feel afterwards.
It's good.
Yeah.
Mage, what about you?
I think for me, doing hard things, like when I think about cycling, because cycling's probably, like LOTOJA was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, I'd say that. Or Mirror Lake road race, that one was pretty brutal. But I was thinking about hard climbs around our area. And the climbs that I like Francis Peak. But I think what I like about it is when you come past the gate and you turn left, you can see the whole climb that you've done. You can see how far you've come. And I think it kind of like motivates you more. It's kind of like, wow, I made it that far. This isn't too bad. I'm pretty close to the top relative to that.
Yeah.
And I think that can just push you so much more. Like you finish LOTOJA and you look at your Strava, you're like, dang, I'm a beast. It's almost so rewarding to do a sport like this where you can track how your progress is just based off of a number of watts or heart rate or anything like that. I think that's super awesome for me.
It's so cool. I have to be honest, when I saw you finish, there was something inside me as rewarding, if not more so than my own finish lines. And I think it was because I know what's ahead of your life. And if I could go back and have finished a race, 200-mile race at 17, whether it's a mission, whether it's marriage, children, career, college, anything in front of you now has a higher probability of success rate because you've done something this hard young, right? I really believe that. It's a mental memory. It's literally a muscle memory of like, well, if I can ride 200 miles, I probably can do a lot of really hard stuff if I plan and prepare for it, So yeah, watching you finish was incredible. What about you, Matthew? Just the hard, because dude's got something in you, like slightly off kilter about
It's a little bit.
doing the hard,
Yeah.
in a positive way. So what do you think?
I'll talk about that in a second. I wanted to piggyback off of what you said about watching Major finish. I think that there is a lot to that when you do these team or group sports or everything. Like all the events I've been at, to see people like happy and satisfied with what they did, whether or not they won or what they beat their demons for the day or became better, is so cool. I experienced that at LOTOJA. So the way our race worked out was that no one could get away all day to make it kind of short, and many tried many times, including myself. And that was my key to the day. I needed to get away at some point, and I needed to power away from them when they were weak enough. I didn't have a chance at the sprint, I knew, so that was my card to play. Didn't work out for me. So we were coming into the bunch sprint with 8 strong, and these guys are strong. And so I kind of knew, which now I'm like, okay, now I need to work on that and beat that demon, but that's for another story. But what happened was that the guy who won went off the front like crazy, like just like a rocket, and no one followed him. And we were still 2 miles from the finish line. So everyone thought, we'll get that guy back. And he just powered through. And to see him afterwards, and like the joy was so worth it for me to be there. Like I was content just being with them all day and competing with these guys. Like that was my win for the day. But I think, like you said, watching Danny like just elated and just at like such a euphoric state was so cool to see. And I think that we feed off of that with each other. That's why it's cool to do these things with each other and to watch these type of things happen. The other people who won at Hoodoo, the female winner, and at Hoodoo there was supported and unsupported riders. So I won the supported category at 29 hours. The unsupported guy who won came in at like 34 or something or whatever, but he did completely on his own. And the dude rode like 440 miles with 4 plugs in his tires because he got a big flat near the beginning. So talk about stress and like just dealing with like, I got to just like keep going and not worry about this, even though my tire could blow out or like whatever, seeing those guys, like their joy, and then connecting with them on Strava and Instagram afterwards and seeing what they're up to and everything, it just keeps feeding itself, and finding those environments and everything. Totally. And watching people do it is so cool.
It's cool because, even hearing you say that, like I reach out to Matthew after his race. I'm like, dude, how was the race? Matthew's text thread was like, I don't know, 4 paragraphs talking about Danny.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know Danny. Danny, you're clearly a stud cyclist, but just for someone who's, watching it go on, Matthew was excited about, I remember him describing your elation and the hugs between you and your family.
Yeah.
Was cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, just there's something so unique about that sport of being happy for the other people.
Well, and yeah, my perspective was cool too, because since we finished first, I also watched Max and Creighton come in. And so I got to see them beaming. I got to watch you guys come in and see Tom just dead. Like the dude was about to like just pass out on his bike, I swear. But like happy.
I was giving all my
You were
ketones
happy.
away to Major.
You were happy. So it was
you to
just
the
so
finish
cool
line.
to see everyone. And yeah, that's a huge part of it for me.
For sure. So the hard comment just on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm still trying to identify it. Maybe that's why I do some of it still. But I just know that it feels good to do hard things. I've always felt that way. And whether it's physically or family wise or financially, just like overcoming those barriers is so rewarding. And physically, it's something you can do every day. Like you can, whether it's my rest and recovery days are probably the days that I feel the worst about cycling. I don't know if you guys experience that ever, but I keep such a high training load that my recovery days like hurt. Like I'm just like my body's recovering and it just does not feel good. But like even on those days, like that's the mental like pain to get through, to know like the process is working, like the body is adapting, things are getting stronger. You can keep doing this. And so I just like have bought into it and keep buying into it, and it just keeps giving back.
Yeah. I love that. So good. I'm going to answer my own question.
Yeah, I was going to say,
if it's
Tom,
okay.
what about you?
I wish part of the reason I was, again, so stoked with Major is because I wished I would have cued into this in high school more and embraced it instead of, I mean, I played football and baseball. I ski raced. I liked athletics, but I can't say that I embraced suffering and doing the hard as a life skill.
Right.
It was kind of like my coaches are going to make me run, and so I'm going to run.
Yeah, you dreaded 2-a-days. Like right? I mean, how do I avoid 2-a-days?
Yeah,
Right?
it was kind of like, I'd get angry or whatever over it. But I have to be honest, now at this stage of life, I have a bit of an addiction to it, and whether it is in cycling, which is just, I love cycling, I love to ride, but I like the burn too, and guys are like, hey, let's just go like chill, like cruise. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe if it's on our plan. I like hard. I like the heart of it. I like hard in business. I like it in education. I like it in, business startup or entrepreneurship or learning or, I wish I would have cued in at a younger age, Major's age, to this is something to become good at. Not just something to fight and to push away and to like get anxious or have anxiety over doing hard things. I wished I would have built a skill to embrace hard is the very nature of the Stoke, right? Totally. Even though that day was brutal at different times for all of us, that's life, and the Stoke, you talked about the elation of a finish line. Man, I was so stoked to get to the finish line, but there's a reason I was stoked, and it was because it was hard to get there, right? I don't want to ride my bike like 5 miles because it's not hard. I want to do the hard ride because at the end, I finished something that was really hard to do, and I feel accomplished and achieved as a result of that. And so, I have embraced doing hard literally as the lifestyle.
Yeah.
When people are like, oh, you're a cyclist, and I don't want to like stop them and correct them, but what I really want to say is, well, my lifestyle is embracing doing hard things. That because that's what feels fulfilling to me. And by the way, it's the very, ingredient for a really good life. Yeah. In my opinion.
Financially, marriage, everything. I was thinking like the things that make marriages good are going through the hard.
Yeah, all the things, and although I'm not going to judge anyone, but for people who are in the later years of life, Preston and I are the closest to this, but when I look at being 60, 65, 70, 75 years old, seeing these two as dads, you know, someday, I want to still move. I want still a high quality of life. Well, if I hate doing hard things, then my 70s look like a recliner.
Yeah.
It looks like a heck of a lot of TV, you know? And so learning and embracing struggle to find Stoke in life is a skill, but I don't know that there's a better skill for a life that's really enjoyed. You know, I believe that wholeheartedly. So if I were in these two guys' shoes, you know, I would be stoked because learning to embrace the hard of what's in front of you in life, man, you're a step ahead in terms of the ability to have just an incredible, fulfilling, happy life, hopefully with a lot of carbon fiber and Bolt shaving the legs.
Smooth legs.
Any last thoughts? Anybody? Mage, any one-liner you want to throw out there? Mitt, what about you?
I guess I can share this real quick. When we were going over the KOM, the hardest climb of the race, basically, it's the last one. And for me, that's where I'm the strongest. And I asked Creighton, who ended up taking second. I looked at him, I was like, hey, Creighton, are you okay if I ramp up the pace a little bit? And he's like, just a little bit. And I was like, okay. So I turned off my power meter. I turned off my power meter and I went to the front. And I ramped it up, and all of a sudden,
Hang on. Tell us why'd you turn off the power meter?
Because I didn't want it to limit me, because I knew I was feeling really good. And I knew if I looked down and I saw whatever power I was doing, I was like, well, that's hard enough. But I knew I could have done more if I didn't see it. So I turned it off. And maybe that wasn't good for Creighton, because I probably ended up ramping it up a lot more because I wasn't watching a number. But I'm following the moto, the group marshal, and I was just eating exhaust. Like, he was going so slow, and I was literally drafting off the moto, and I had to yell at our group marshal, a motorcycle on the climb, to go faster, because that's how fast we were going. And it was a good experience. It felt super good yelling at a motorcycle going up and down. Please go faster. Going up a pretty hard climb. So that was a good little part of LOTOJA for me.
Yeah. I love the fact that you were there and you were willing to take a fitness risk,
Yeah.
right? When so many guys are like, play it cool, play it safe. I mean, there's something to that, right? What an interesting thing to learn, you know, in the middle of a race. Just, again, race IQ. That's cool. Press, parting thoughts?
LOTOJA was a really different experience this year than it was last year for me. And I came into this LOTOJA with double the miles I had from last year. So in terms of my endurance fitness, it was there. But I was also dealing with a lot of other external issues with some health. And so I didn't know what to expect. So that gave me anxiety and stress. But this LOTOJA, with all of those factors, was the most enjoyable. I was never deep. I was never in trouble. And I think it goes back to the prep. Ultimately, all of the prep allowed me to be okay. So on one hand, it was a really enjoyable day, and I got to ride with people and help people, whereas usually I'm the one that needs help. So that was actually really rewarding, to be a wheel that people could follow.
Totally.
But it also left me wanting more. I immediately crossed the finish line, and I think I texted the group that I'm ready to sign up for next year.
Yeah, Preston signed up and his wife resigned all in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I need someone to help me in the feed zone. So
By the way, as you finish, you need to give a shout out to, you know, the support team, because they're incredible.
Yeah, Natalie and Emery were fantastic for us, and JT for kind of our crew. Am I missing
And Grandma
anyone else?
Niederhauser.
Oh,
like,
that's right.
And she was the happiest smile I saw all day. I'm like,
Grandma Mimi was there, and also your cousin Ivy, the
Yeah.
boys' cousin Ivy. But we had great support, and Nat's awesome, and she knows her husband's anal. So it probably lends to some stress that she has an additional stress. Yeah. So yeah, she's awesome, and we don't give her enough credit for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a great day.
Yeah. I'll try to be quick because I have a couple thoughts. We talked about the learn to suffer. Also, like, live life, have fun, go on the cool dates, guys. Like, don't just hear us say, don't be addicted yet. A little bit of balance is
Too
good.
late.
A little bit of balance is good for sure. So I Zwift a lot. That's where a lot of my training comes from. And that's where my first like biking community is. And that's where I know a lot of people from. And there's one person that's on there that we do a lot of rides with. And she always says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I think that that's some of the connection between the learning to suffer. If you can learn to choose the hard, then you are going to have a much more successful life, because choosing the hard leads to the better outcomes. If you want the outcomes, learn to choose the hard. So that was one of my thoughts. The other one is just in general, come join us on Zwift, guys. Come have fun. I get up super early and do it, but there are groups throughout, and it's a fantastic way to get the training in and have fun, and the community's there and everything. So love that.
How do we find you on Zwift?
I'm on there. I'm known on Zwift as Lefty because there's so many Matthews, and I go by Lefthand. So you can find me Lefty Lefthand. Last name's Lefthand on there, and you can find me. And the dirt group is the one I ride the most with, but there's a whole bunch of different ones. And there's just such good people on there. It's also a very humbling platform because you can tear it up in these areas and you can be super strong. And there's like 50,000 better than you on at any given time, it feels like, because there's strong cyclists all over the world that get on there. And so that's cool because there's always a carrot to chase. If you like the burn, there's always someone there in front of you. And the cool thing is that people are into it nowadays, and they chat and you talk with them and you get to know them. And so there's a couple guys that I know that we go at each other every once in a while, or we go on these long rides together and we talk about family and life and suffering and how to get through it and training and everything. So amazing platform. Love it.
Sweet. My last thought is thank you guys. I want to thank the Niederhauser family. That was, even though the times, different finish times, that was pretty fulfilling for me, 2024, seeing a father and two sons, amazing, dudes finish together. That was pretty rad. Our other friends who were involved in the day, all the brain stokers, Creighton, Max, Matt, Ryan Welch, thank you. Thank you, Mark Hancock, for somehow you better bonus Ryan Welch Mark with pack stock or something, man. Ryan was incredible on the day, and Mark is just, that was cool. Mark's story of the day, which we should capture sometime. But anyway, thank you all. It was fun. I said this before, but I'll just say it again. One of my favorite movies is The River That Runs Through It. It's about this dad, his boys, a lot of turmoil in the family. And fly fishing is the river that runs through their lives, Cycling has become somewhat of a river that runs through our lives. And even though we're all in it for different reasons and different motives, it continues to be a good, positive thing to be involved with community-wise for our own physical and mental health. So thanks. It's been good.
That's been great.
You've had your daily dose.